Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the most important thing in your week. My name is Robbie. This is Chris. Behind us is Adam Duvall. And we are here for Ahead of the Curve, presented by Loudmouth Sports Talk and Bombshell Bowling. We're going to lead off with a little brand ambassadorship here. Bombshell Bowling. Get your shirts. Get your short. They don't have shorts. Get shirts. Hoodies. Tanks. Tanks a bunch. Chris, how are you tonight?
I'd like to thank Michael Bay for the new intro to this show. It was just wonderful to watch all those numbers exploding.
Yeah, no, if there were more numbers, there would have been more explosions, and Michael Bay charges by the explosion, so we can only go up to 8. Anyway.
8 in the budget, I got you.
Hey, once we get bigger, we can afford more numbers and more exploding. So let's lead things off with hot or not. We've got some guys that are hot. We've got some guys that are not. We've got some guys that smoke pot. Not in baseball, though. That's mostly football players. Chris, first guy on the hot list, Trey Turner, leading off. He's a leadoff man. He's the first hot guy. Why is he hot? How hot is he? He's actually pretty good looking. He's a hot man.
I mean, his ability to just get on base and then wreak havoc once he's on there is really tough. I mean, it puts a ton of pressure on teams. He's got 4 stolen bases in the last 10 games, I think it was, somewhere around there.
Yeah, about last 10 games, he's stolen 4 bases.
Yeah, so, I mean, it just puts a tremendous amount of pressure on opposing defenses to have to deal with that sort of speed anytime he gets on the base path. I've seen it firsthand watching a lot of games in the NL East, and you just don't want to see him get on because you figure he's probably got a chance to score with some of the guys behind him in the lineup and the fact that he's able to just manufacture a base or 2 at a time. So he's a really, really good player. To me, he's the best leadoff hitter in the entire game, like the most consistent leadoff hitter. You get guys that can move up in the lineup to heighten your on-base percentage chances, but I think purely as a leadoff hitter, I think he's the best in the game right now.
It also does not hurt that he is arguably the fastest man in baseball.
Yeah, and what's a shame is it's not really translating to results. The Nationals just haven't really been in the race much this year. They haven't really kicked on, and you didn't know what the loss of Rendon was going to mean to this team. Soto didn't start the year in the lineup because of the COVID situation, and they've just never really truly recovered. And in that division with the team playing as well as it has at different times, the Phillies have had a good run here at the start of September. The Braves, we're going to talk about them plenty. They've put up bunches of runs. The Marlins are at 500. The Mets have had their moments, so it hasn't been particularly consistent at all. So there's no real easy game there. There's no game in the NL East you walk in right away and think you're going to roll over and take 2 or 3 in a series. Every game is a battle.
Yeah, they do tend to beat up on each other, and the Nationals are currently the least in the East, unfortunately for them. How about going to somebody who's not hot right now, staying in the National League East? We've got superstar, paid like a megastar, Bryce Harper. He's got no home runs in his last 10 games, and he was thrown out the other night for being a doofus.
I feel like he's good for 1 or 2 ejections a year. I think if you want to set the over-under on about 1.5, 2.5, you'd feel pretty good about investing money in that. I think the batting average and the lack of power, again, it's the inverse of Trey Turner, where he's been great and the Nationals have struggled. Bryce Harper has had a really terrible time of it here at the start of September, yet the Phillies are in the playoffs right now. They've been able to kind of weather the storm, and you figure Harper's good enough to turn around at any given moment, and all it takes is 1 or 2 at-bats for him to feel as though he's back among the game's best hitters. But his batting average has dropped almost 40 points in the last 2 weeks or so. So it's a tough go for him. I think we all have seen the ups and the downs of Harper's career. At his very best, he can be on the short list of the best players in the game, and at his worst, he costs a lot of money, and there's no other way about it.
Yeah, Bryce Harper is costing a lot of money to not play well. He's cost $25 million a year. So his batting average has dropped from 303 to 261 just in the last couple of weeks. That's not what you pay $25 million a year for. He's still taking walks. He's got 11 walks in his last 10 games, which is still bananas. So he's getting pitched around, but the results aren't there with the bat. If you can't hit, you can't play. Staying in the National League East, it's going to be a National League East heavy show tonight. We've got Jacob deGrom, and this is going to make you happy, Chris, and try to suppress your you're happy over there a little bit.
Well, I wanted to touch about the Phillies too. When we talk about Harper at that 13-year contract, you've got another 11 seasons after that. And the big question they've got this offseason is whether or not they're going to be able to keep JT Realmuto, who's had a really strong year behind the plate. Is another offensive weapon that they've got. He's set to be a free agent in the winter. So, does he stick around, or does Harper's price point drive him out of town because it's going to cost 9 figures to keep him there? Moving on to Jacob deGrom, though, who I think, for the amount of money he's being paid is somehow being underpaid. It's incredible what he's been able to accomplish since signing that extension. He's had 2 double-digit strikeout efforts in his last 3. The velocity to me is the thing that really stands out with deGrom. His average fastball is around 99 miles an hour. I mean, he was able to put guys away and make guys look foolish with 96-mile-an-hour fastballs. I've touched on this before, but just adding that extra oomph in that fastball. I mean, he's able to throw a 93-mile-an-hour slider. It's the opposite of variation with some of the guys that'll have like a 15-mile-an-hour gap between their fastball and their changeup. He throws every pitch hard, and then he's got a couple of tricks up the sleeve. If he really needs to throw a curveball, really needs to throw a changeup, he can mix it in there and still throw it for strikes. The walk rate is excellent again. He's a couple balls have gotten out of the yard, but not nearly enough to where you'd be concerned about it. But that velocity and that command is just so difficult to handle. And yet it's kind of being lost in the shuffle, A, because the Mets are not good, and B, there are so many pitchers, particularly in the National League, that have a sub-2 ERA right now between Trevor Bauer, Yu Darvish, a few of the other guys, Clayton Kershaw. I mean, there have been just exceptional pitchers in the National League throughout the course of the year. And you almost take for granted how every 5 days deGrom goes out there and just paints a masterpiece.
Let's chat just a little bit about the NL Cy Young race, where we've got a ridiculous amount of candidates so far this year. Not the least of which being Max Fried, having himself a great season for the.
Yeah, he just went on the injured list, which hurts his candidacy.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's anything too serious that should keep him out too long. He shouldn't be out long enough for his lead in the wins above replacement department to dwindle too badly.
Mm-hmm.
Right behind him, Zach Gallen, upstart pitcher for the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah,
they're the worst team in baseball right now, but he's been among the best pitchers in baseball. He's striking dudes out left, right, and center. Got Trevor Bauer still doing his thing in Cincinnati. He's second in the National League in ERA. Got Yu Darvish. He's got 7 wins right now. There's pitching all up and down the National League, and some of that might be the fact that the bats have been a little bit suppressed this season. But the other part of that is just the pitchers have just been on their horse. They've been doing everything they need to do to be amazing. And when a guy like Aaron Nola is 10th in the National League in ERA with a 2.74, it's just a special year for pitchers.
Yeah, it's been an unbelievable year. And again, I think we talked about this a little bit off camera. And I think, given the fact that it's been such a bizarre season with that 2-month layoff and a shortened season, every bat meaning just a little bit more, you're going to see guys press. I think that it kind of favors the pitchers to really go out there and put up terrific numbers, albeit it hasn't worked out for the Angels bullpen. We'll get to them in just a minute, but the starters in the National League have really put on a show this year. If it was to me, I'd probably vote Trevor Bauer as the Cy Young Award winner now, but there's still a third of the season almost to get through.
Trevor Bauer's walks plus hits per inning pitch stat this season is a mind-boggling 0.794. He's also still leading baseball with his 2 complete game shutouts. And another dude who's just ringing guys up left, right, and center. He's got 12.4 strikeouts per 9. So moving on from the National League Cy Young race, we got some guys that are not looking so good on the pitching side of things. We've got a quartet of pitchers in the Angels bullpen who over the last couple of weeks have been nothing short of trash. Chris, Ty Buttrey, Felix Pena, Jacob Barnes, and Noe Ramirez, they have had, between the 4 of them, they've had between a 7.71 and a 9.95 ERA. None of them has a whip below 1.5, and they've all just been complete and utter Oscar's house garbage.
It's a shame. The Angels count on a few of those guys, too, at the back end of their bullpen. Buttrey immediately comes to mind. Ramirez they've used in spot starts. They've used him as an opener before. So these are important arms that the Angels are really getting, having all have difficulties kind of at the exact same time. And you feel for Mike Trout, and it's seemingly going to be another year in which the best player in baseball, who's having an unbelievable year, is going to be watching the playoffs from home. Albeit he'll be much happier to be there this time around because he's a new father, and congratulations to him. But it's a bad look for that franchise to continue to throw money on big name players. I mean, Anthony Rendon's been just fine, but there's just not enough arms in that team, in that system right now for them to be competitive. And you wonder what the long-term vision is for Artie Moreno and for the Angels franchise. How do you get consistently in the playoffs and showcase Mike Trout, showcase Anthony Rendon, showcase some of these guys, the Otanis of the world to a larger audience, and cash in on the talent that they do have available to them.
Yeah, they're wasting some good seasons by, like you mentioned, Anthony Rendon just signed that big contract, and it doesn't seem like he's had the big contract hangover. He's got a 9.64 OPS. He's got 8 home runs. We've got Mike Trout, obviously still the best player on the planet, with the exception of perhaps our Lord and Savior Fernando Tatis Jr. Otani seems to be pulling himself out of the hole a little bit. He's actually got 7 stolen bases right now, which I don't think anyone expected. And the reclamation project that is Dylan Bundy for the Angels has looked really good. He's got a 2.49 ERA right now. He's got 55 strikeouts over 50 2/3 innings. It's just that bullpen.
He's been about the only bright spot in that pitching staff. Bundy's been very strong all year.
Yeah, Bundy's been great. Heaney's been, better than useful, not quite incredible. But the rest of that team has just been painful. Mike Mayers, a guy who nobody's ever heard of, is the only arm in their bullpen that hasn't been completely depressing and disappointing for at least half of the season. So they really
when you look at their depth chart and see Ansel Robles as the likely closer to the team before the season starts, you knew that there was going to be trouble there.
He actually, I wouldn't say one of their bright spots because he's got an 11.2 ERA for the season. Ansel Robles. Yeah, he's just what's the word I'm looking for?
He garnered a reputation, became very meme worthy when he was with the Mets, because every time that you see just a towering fly ball, every fly ball that gets hit, he immediately points to the sky and shouts for basically for his outfielders to be ready to catch a pop up, even if it's a 500-foot home run. So you see pictures and memes of him where he would have that pointing up to catch a pop up, and there'd be like a nuclear bomb in the background.
Well, that's because during his time with the Mets, he gave up 7 home runs in less than 20 innings in his last half season in New York.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, no. For his career, he's at 1.2 per 9, which seems a little low, given that he has a propensity for giving up the dinger. A lot of guys on the Angels staff, though, this season are giving up the dinger. Julio Teheran is over 2 per 9. Griffin Canning's right around there. Noe Ramirez's number has spiked over 1. Hansel Robles is at 2. They can't seem to keep the ball in the yard. But that actually brings us to our next hot player, Mike Trout, who also can't seem to keep the ball in the yard. Right before we started our broadcast, he hit his major league leading 16th home run of the season. He's having another Mike Trout type season with an OPS over 1,000 and a slugging percentage over 650 and 38 RBI in 39 games. And on top of that, like you mentioned, he's got a new baby. So he's got somebody to play for now. He's got somebody to spend that $400 million on.
I mean, you could realistically have him in this hot and not just about every week of the season. He's that good. I mean, I don't think we need to really claim to know anything more or add anything more insightful to the conversation, to the space about Mike Trout. Yeah, he's really good. He's really good at baseball. He hits the ball a mile. There you go. That's all we need to really talk about.
Not exactly a hot take to say
it's
that
not
he's
rocket science. Huh? He's outstanding.
Yeah, this is news for everyone. Breaking: Mike Trout, very good. Let's go across the country. Let's find a hitter who's not so hot right now. Hunter Renfroe, no, not the small wide receiver for the Raiders, the outfielder for the Tampa Bay Rays. He's only taken 21 at-bats in the last couple of weeks, but he's hit those to a tune of an 0.95 average. That is 2 hits in 21 at-bats. One of those was a home run, so good for him. Everything else has been complete dog shit. Chris, I had higher expectations for Hunter Renfroe.
Yeah, I think at the start of the year, I mean, there was a game he had against the Braves earlier in the season. He went deep twice, had a 4 RBI night, and I think we kind of all thought, he's got pop. He's certainly somebody you could plug into the Rays on any given day, and he could go off and have a big outing. He had a multi-homer game against Boston on August the 13th. But other than little spurts, it just hasn't been there for him. His on base is 231. He's only hitting 155 and 97 at bats. It's been disappointing, and that was kind of a big trade they made with the Padres, in which Manuel Margot came back. In addition, it just hasn't really worked out as a change of scenery for Renfroe.
Once he puts it all together, though, he's got some special skills. He's an excellent defender in the outfield. He's got light tower power. He's always struggled to get on base, and unfortunately, that's manifested itself in the fact that he can't get a hit this season either. He cannot buy a vowel, as they say.
I mean, he's been a pro for almost 7 years, and he's going to be 29 in January. So there's really not much more time to put it together. So
you can
still at this point, I think he kind of is what he is. I mean, he's as you mentioned, he's a good defensive player. He's going to be one of those guys going to be on a roster for a number of years, but I just don't think it's ever going to really fully and justify the lofty draft grade that he had. He was picked He was picked 13th overall, if I'm not mistaken, by the Padres. But he's got 3 years of 25 plus home runs in the bigs. We're not talking about somebody who's not capable. It's just a matter of, can he take that next step into being a top echelon player? And it doesn't look like it's really going to happen.
Yeah, you're saying he might have maxed out.
Right.
Well, that's a shame because I'm a fan of his. Staying in the American League East and also staying on the not column, I feel like I've mentioned this several weeks in a row now. The Yankees are struggling hard. They are not just driving and riding on the struggle bus. They are completely populating the struggle bus. They changed the tires on the struggle bus to cinder blocks, and they're now careening off a cliff. They are 22-21 and abysmal.
And yet, here they are still in the playoffs. I mean, it could be a lot worse. It could be a lot worse for the Yankees. But right now, they are still in this 8-team playoff race right now. And they've got a half game in front of Baltimore. And, I mean, as nice of a story as been to see them and the Tigers both have their moments, do you really have the faith that the Orioles and the Tigers are going to catch the Yankees, or do you think the Yankees are going to turn this around at some point?
I mean, the fan in me says that the Yankees have got to turn it around at some point, but the pessimist, who I would call a realist in me, says that they are the degree to which they're struggling is it's telling. It's problematic and it's telling. I mean, dating back to August 18th,
I've never seen a team endure as many injuries to top stars over a multi-year span as I've seen with the Yankees the last couple of years. I mean, you can't on any of those guys to be in the lineup for more than about 10 games in a row. And you're based on Trout and Stanton driving in the LeMahieu's and those type of players at the top of the lineup, and then all of a sudden you're replacing them with quad A kind of guys. It really does take a toll, and it's finally kind of caught up to them. Like last year, I think they overperformed. They had guys, they were calling up guys that no one had heard of, and they were still thriving. The Gio Ursulas, the Luke Voigt. I mean, the players that really weren't at that time even regarded as like upper echelon prospects in the Yankee farm system that were coming in and just crushing the baseball. And it's finally kind of caught up to them, but yet they still could easily end up in the playoffs here in a couple of weeks.
They're still getting some good production out of some guys right now that are getting called up, kind of the next man up thing. Clint Frazier has 1.2 wins above replacement in his 24-game stint so far. He's batting .288. Aaron Hicks is starting to look like a major league ball player again. Gleyber Torres is slowly climbing his way out of his rut. Luke Voigt is hitting dingers on dingers on dingers. They just can't get it. Like you said, they can't keep anyone healthy. Ursula, Stanton, and Judge are all currently on the injured list, along with Tommy Canley and James Paxton. It's just been it's another rough season injury wise, and I'm starting to wonder if it's a training staff issue, if it's just the fact that God hates the Yankees for some reason. I have no idea what the problem is.
Oh, get out of here with that nonsense. God hates your 28-time world champions or 27-time world champions.
This was supposed to be 28.
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Well, maybe now he hates them. It's a struggle to watch. Anyway.
Boy, those are some first world baseball problem complaints right there. My goodness.
I'm sorry. I guess I've never had to think about what it's like to be a Mets fan.
Or a fan of, 80% of baseball if you're complaining about how bad the Yankees have it, for God's sake.
At least most teams do it to themselves. The Yankees are just getting killed by injuries.
Mm.
Snake bit. Anyway, let's move on to something less depressing for me to talk about. Let's talk about some young dudes that are coming up and hitting the shit out of things and throwing ball hard and playing good baseball. Starts right there in Baltimore. You mentioned it. Let's talk about Ryan Mountcastle. He's got a fun name and a really fun batting average.
Yeah, he's been amazing since they called him up. He was their minor league player of the year last year, and the hype around him really started to swell. He was a first round pick from right down the road here. He grew up in Winter Springs, which is about 10 minutes from where I live, and went to the neighboring high school to the one myself and my family went to, and he's had an amazing impact since being called up. He's been with the Orioles since I think the end of August. 68 plate appearances to this point, a 383 batting average, 4 home runs, and 14 RBIs, slugging 633. It's a 1074 OPS. I mean, those are top numbers for a 23-year-old kid to come up and just start dominating right from the get-go. And he was pegged, I think, to play first base for the most part for Baltimore, but they seemingly found him a home in left field, almost playing a Mancini role with him out. So, I mean, it looks like they've got a long-term part of the equation figured out. And I think it's exciting. The Orioles have shown enough this year to get fans interested. And I mean, we haven't even seen the best of Austin Hayes, who was battled injuries again in center. DJ Stewart has had a really good week, and he's only 26, so he's still a guy that they can theoretically have improve over the next couple of years and become a regular. I think Baltimore's in an interesting spot. I wouldn't say they're as bad as we probably thought they'd be, but they're also not necessarily far enough along to contend with a Tampa, Toronto, and even the Yankees at full strength. But I would say that they're pretty solidly the 4th best team in that division right now.
I mean, even beyond the names that we've mentioned, just looking up and down their roster, it's all guys in their 25, 26, 27s who are producing.
We haven't seen Adley Rutschman yet either. They're the top pick from last year.
Yeah, no, he's going to come up and take over for Pedro Severino and Chance Sisco, who've actually been doing a pretty good job themselves this season, holding it down behind the plate. They got Renato Nunez, who's got his 10 home runs at 26 years old. You got Anthony Santander. Before he went down, he had 11 home runs. I mean, they've just, and he's 25. They've got young dudes doing it all up and down the lineup to kind of balance out the expensive, old, terrible contract of Chris Davis that's still weighing down their payroll.
Yeah, they've got a lot of guys that are kind of entering their peak years kind of at the right time. And if they can get, big time contributions for some of these prospects, and what they really need is pitching help. They just don't have a lot of quality arms in their major league rotation right now. But as that comes along, I think the Orioles might be a team worth keeping an eye on from afar. But I mean, to me, that they're still quite a bit behind the other teams in that division, particularly the Rays, the Yankees, and the Blue Jays with their young core as well.
Yeah, the Orioles, like you mentioned, they are still not great with on the pitching side of things. They are their team ERA is not terrible. It's a 4.40, but that's a lot on the strength of a couple of big bullpen arms in Tanner Scott and Paul Fry. Over their 35 1/3 innings, they've only a total of 8 earned runs, and they've struck out 41 guys. Beyond them, it's been a lot of mediocre and average. And before Michael Gibb got traded, he was awesome too, but of course he got traded, so he's not exactly a factor anymore. So they're still kind of searching for that identity pitching wise. None of their rotation has long term anything about them except maybe John Means, and he's already fallen hard back to earth after a stellar rookie season last year. He's allowed 9 home runs in 26 innings.
I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure his fielding independent pitching was like significantly higher than his ERA last year, and that's kind of where you expected almost a bit of regression.
Well, they're both miserable this year. Last year, his ERA was very good, and his fielding independent pitching was acceptable. It was middle of the rotation, above serviceable. This year, both of those numbers are just absolute shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, last season it was a 3.60 ERA, a 4.41 fielding independent pitching. This year it's 6.58 and 7.18 respectively, and those are batting practice numbers.
That's still 0.8 of a run though. That's a pretty wide disparity.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he definitely there was some regression to be had, but this level of regression is
right. Yeah, and you almost think it'll regress back to him being
there's somewhere in between
a good quality starter next year. So there's somewhere in the middle of him being an all-star last year and him being, batting practice this year, there's got to be some sort of middle road to where a decent pitcher like Means will be.
Ideally, he'll find that middle of the pack, that middle of the road trajectory to play on. Continuing on with some of the young guns, Corbin Burns, Milwaukee, Mr. Burns, excellent. He has been excellent. He's.
I was waiting for you to get there. I didn't want to steal your thunder. I was waiting for you to get there. Otherwise, I was going to take it myself. But yes, he's been.
The loading bubble was very slow to finish in my head. But no, Corbin Burns. He's only pitched 9 games so far this season because he was absolutely terrible last year and required a call up this season. But in those 9 games, including 6 starts, he's got a 1.99 ERA, a National League leading 2.03 fielding independent pitching, a Major League leading 4.4 hits per 9, and he's struck out 64 guys in 45 innings. He's been electric.
And I mentioned differential. I mentioned differentials that pertain to Means, like the differential 0.04, like 0.04 between his ERA and his fielding independent pitching. So what that says is, he's good value for what he's done so far this year. He's been terrific. 64 Ks and 45 1/3 is top quality stuff. And we knew he could strike guys out. He had 70 and 49 a year ago, just didn't have the results. And the walk rate was quite a bit higher, but the hit rate was outrageous. He was giving up 12.9 hits per 9 compared to 4.4 this year. So he's reduced the hits by 2/3. Like that's an enormous improvement. And yeah, I mean he's another one of those guys that absolutely should be considered in the race for the National League Cy Young right now. And the Brewers have needed it because their offense has really struggled this year. They were among the worst teams in the league offensively, and yet they're still right there in the hunt.
They're struggling a little bit getting contributions from a couple of their biggest names in Keston Hiura and obviously
Yelich,
former National League MVP Christian Yelich. The two of them have combined for 20 home runs in 80 games, which is survivable. It's above survivable, but they've also only got a 2.29 and a 2.13 batting average, respectively. That's not the numbers you want out of really your 2 and 3 hitters in the order. That's not how that's going to work if you're going to be a winning ball club. So once the offense can come around, they can actually give this pitching staff some support. Pitching staff's been a little bit up and down. Perpetual superstar young gun Josh Hader's having himself another excellent season. He's allowed 2 hits in 11 2/3 innings. Of course, he's walked 10 guys. That's not something you want to see. The strikeouts are all there. One more young guy that they've got going on that Milwaukee team. Chris, how much do you know about Devin Williams?
Not much, to be completely honest.
Well, let me give you a quick rundown. He's 25 years old. He's got perhaps the nastiest changeup in baseball, and he struck out 35 hitters in 17 innings.
Yeah, that'll work.
18.5 per 9. He's also only allowed a total of 10 base runners for a .588 walks plus hits per inning pitched. His fielding independent pitching is 1.06. His ERA is 0.53. He's just been ridiculous this season.
Yeah, I just haven't seen a great deal of the Brewers. I mean, they're not on TV a great deal in Florida, so unless you actively go out to find the Brewers, I mean, I just haven't seen enough of him in particular. But I know plenty about Corbin Burns, so you surprised me there. You caught me looking on the outside corner.
I mean, no one really saw Devin Williams coming this season. He's got an obscene strikeout rate. He's only faced 65 hitters and he struck out 35 of them. That's more bananas than Donkey Kong's stash. Like that's crazy. He's on a ridiculous tear this season.
I'd like to see if that's sustainable. That's an outrageous rate.
He was striking guys out last season in his cup of coffee debut. 14 and 13 and 2/3 innings, but he was struggling giving up hits last season. It seems like between last season and this season, that changeup has gone from a very good pitch to one of the most lethal pitches in all of baseball.
A wipeout pitch, yeah.
It's a wipeout pitch. His career minor league strikeout rate is 9.6 per 9, so it's not like this is the first time he struck dudes out, but 18.5 per 9 is kind of insane.
Yeah.
He's actually ahead of our former favorite young gun, Josh Stomont, in strikeout rate right now.
Your boy. I know there's another player you want to talk about down south in Miami, and that being Sixto Sanchez, and a player that I think the Marlins are going to be very, very happy with for at least a few years until they probably trade him for more prospects. But so
if they don't
far
trade him,
so
he'll
good.
walk. But yeah, they're going to have to trade him.
Yeah, they'll trade him. They'll trade him eventually. But so far so good for the rookie. He's got 25 Ks in 25 innings, 5 earned runs for a 1.80 ERA in 4 starts. The fielding independent pitching is 3.1. So again, it's a little bit. He's been a little bit fortunate, but very good nonetheless. I mean, he hasn't really been victimized by anything outrageous. And the 12.5 Ks per 9 is very good rate. So I think you have to be excited if you're a Marlins fan to see one of these prospects finally come up and show some show some promise in the pitching staff, because they're crying out for an ace. They have been for a number of years, and if he can be the guy that gives them a quality outing every 5 days, or for the most part every 5 days, we've seen that they can hit the ball enough to contend. They're still a playoff team, which is remarkable to me. So we'll see how it goes, but he's going to help them go a long way.
The thing that's impressed me the most about Sanchez, besides the fact that he's leading the team in wins above replacement after only 4 starts, or even more than that, the 200 inning pace that he would be on over the course of a full season, is the fact that he's walked 2 hitters in 25 innings. That's it. His walk rate is 0.7 per 9. He's done such a good job of limiting any damage that can be done to him, which has made him more effective. That's kind of what is suppressing his ERA relative to his fielding independent, is that microscopic walk rate. If you can keep guys from getting on base for free, you can keep yourself from getting torched. And so watching him do that.
I said 12.5 K. I said 12.5 K per 9. I meant 12.5 K per walk. That's something I want to clarify.
You're forgiven, but you're on thin ice. He's actually been he's lucky that he wasn't pitching last night. Last night, the Marlins played against the Atlanta Braves, and the guys who took the mound for the Marlins, most notably Jordan Yamamoto and Pablo Lopez, they got cuffed around something fierce. The Braves put up a total of 29 runs on the Marlins last night. I just remember looking down at my phone and seeing that the Braves had scored 29 and thinking to myself, good Lord, this will be fun to talk about. Did you see any of what was going on with that last night?
I'll be honest, I was watching a hockey game between the Islanders and the Lightning, but I did get the word about 29. It's impossible to not hear about 29 runs at some point, right? Yeah, and this is a lineup that has the capability of an utter explosion at just about any time. So, I mean, the fact that the Braves have done it doesn't really shock me at all. It's the second most runs in Major League Baseball since 1900, and that record belongs to the Texas Rangers in 2007 when they scored 30 against the Orioles. And the guy that's been really leading the charge here is Adam Duvall. Who's, again, the background of your screen tonight. But Duvall, with his second 3-homer game in this week, he's just having a heck of a run right now. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about the hot streak that Duvall's gotten himself into?
So Adam Duvall, he's not exactly a household name. He was fairly hyped as a prospect. He's had a couple of big seasons as a pro, a couple of 30-homer years. He's kind of really made his bones these last 2 seasons as a utility guy for the Braves and a pinch hitter, and he's been thriving in that role, but nobody expected him to have 3 home runs in a game, let alone anyone expecting him to do it twice inside of 8 days. Over the last 8 days, he's hit 8 total home runs, of course, 6 of those coming in 2 separate games, but he's been on an absolute bananas tear. In those 8 games, he's batting .414. He's driven in, should have had it, 16 runs. He's been on a ridiculous tear for this team, and he's really the least likely guy you'd expect to do that too. They've got a big bat in Austin Riley, who's a bigger prospect. They've got Dansby Swanson, who's coming into his own a little bit, hitting a good ball this season. They've got Travis d'Arnaud, who for a fact has been, kind of a swing for the fences from the shoes kind of guy, and he's been pretty damn good at that. Oh, and on top of that, they've got Ronald Acuna Jr. and Freeman. Acuna Jr., who might be a 40-40 threat next time we have a full season, and Freeman, who's got a .599 slugging percentage again. This is a team full of guys who can just tear the cover off. We haven't even mentioned Marcell Ozuna. who's having the resurgent year of his career. He's got a 609 slugging percentage as their primary DH. They're just getting hits all the way up and down the lineup, but you never expect 29 runs in a game.
I want to give you a stat, which was in a piece published today by David Schoenfeld of ESPN, that kind of screams to how, you ask, how does the team score 29 runs? You just crush the baseball. They had 17 balls. They had 17 hit balls yesterday with an exit velocity over 100 miles an hour. And that includes the top 5 being 3 home runs. Acuna's off of Alex Vesia at 111.5. Duvall's off of Josh Smith, the grand slam in the 7th at 110.4. And then Freddie Freeman home run in the 3rd at 108.5. The other 2 of those were outs. The 3 of them left the ballpark, and then they had 2 that were recorded outs by the Marlins. But I mean, they just smoked the ball last night. I mean, that's an unbelievable amount of hard hit balls. It's not the record. The Nationals had 20 in a 23-5 win over the Mets 3 seasons ago. But still, that's a ridiculous number of balls just flying off the bat. And it means that there were either balls that were just left in great spots or the Braves knew exactly what was coming.
I mean, this is just a whole team that can rake up and down the lineup. They've got 3, 4, 5, 6. They've got 6 guys with at least 7 home runs. They're tops in the National League in slugging percentage and OPS. They're number 3 in batting average and 2 in runs scored. This is a team that is here to hit, and they are here to hit hard, and they're here to hit far, and they're here to score runs and win ball games. And they kind of need to score all those runs because the pitching staff has been, if not ineffective, then hurt. Almost everyone up and down the line, up and down the starting rotation has either been injured or cuffed around at some point or another so far this season. Pitching rotation, rather, not starting lineup.
Yeah, and the Braves are pretty comfortably in front of the NL East, and I wanted to touch on the playoff race just because of how wild and volatile it is, particularly in the wild card race down in the NL. You've got virtually all but about 2 or 3 teams that are still in it, and anybody from about 6th back can miss the playoffs. So, I mean, if you had to pick, who do you feel like is going to round out that playoff field? Like we can pretty safely say teams like the Braves, the Dodgers, the Padres, the Cubs are all going to make it. From there, who knows?
It's an 8-team race this year. I mean, they've expanded the playoff format. So your top 3 teams, you're each division winner. It's I think it's pretty scratch right now how it's going to be between the Braves, the Cubs, and the Dodgers. The Cubs they're 2 games up on the Cardinals, but they're playing a lot better baseball than the Cardinals. So I don't see the Cubs giving up that division. I don't see the Dodgers looking back from their major league leading 727 winning percentage. You can pretty much write them in as chalk. The Phillies look like they're going to take a wild card spot. Like you mentioned earlier, they're looking like a good ball club. I think the Cardinals could keep up their pace if they want. It's really just going to be a matter of health for them. They're looking like a playoff team. Our Lord and Saviors, San Diego Padres, are looking like they're the 4th best team in the West. They're actually the biggest threat to the Dodgers right now. At 28-17, they are having a great season. They'd be leading at either of the other 2 divisions in the National League. They're on a tear. They're getting contributions from everybody, including
they're just stuck with the Dodgers. Yeah.
Yeah. If they weren't in the division with the Dodgers, they'd be getting talked about as the best team in baseball. That's 6 playoff teams. 2 more. The Giants are ahead right now in winning percentage. They would be the number 7 seed. And they look like they've done fine. They're playing really well at home. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They're not struggling too hard in any phase of the game right now across the board. They've got kind of late bloomer superstar, grandson of Carl, Mike Yastrzemski's been really good. And beyond that, the 8th seed really could go to anybody. The 8th seed could go to the Rockies if they can turn their shit around. They've been slumped lately a bit. The Marlins, who are 5-5 in their last 10 and 19-19 overall, have been annoyingly consistent at that. So they look like they could be something. If the Mets can figure anything out, they could do it. If the Reds can figure out how to hit, they could do it. Really, anybody but the Pirates, the Nats, and the Diamondbacks has a chance here.
Yeah. So of those picks, I mean, let's assume. I mean, you're looking at I'm looking at the playoff percentages. Assuming the Cardinals are in, they're in 6th place right now with an 81% playoff possibility. The Giants are in 7th at 73.5, and then it's a toss-up from there on out. Is there a team that you tend to lean towards as far as that group of 5 between the Marlins, the Rockies, the Brewers, the Mets, and the Reds? Is there a team that you tend to look towards either how they're playing right now, or how do you think they can get there and turn it around?
If I had to put money on one of them, I'd put my money on the Reds. I've been touting the Reds since the offseason, like the actual offseason, not the COVID offseason, because their pitching staff is just so dominant. Their top three pitchers being Trevor Bauer, Sonny Gray, and Luis Castillo have been they've been lights out all season, all three of them. They're all outstanding. When you've got a front three right like that, it just takes a few more balls bounce in the right direction in the field to score some more runs and win some more ball games. They're only 3.5 back of the Cardinals right now for second place in the Central. So it's not like they're playing bad baseball. They need to hit the ball more. Beyond them, I mean, the Rockies would be my runner-up for that. They've gotten a surprisingly good pitching showing from their team, and Trevor Story has been just swiping bases in addition to hitting laser beams. I think he might be the best all-around player on that team, even including Nolan Arenado, just because Story, in addition to the hitting and the defense, has got the legs to make a difference on the bases.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to lean towards the Brewers too. I mean, I think with the arms they've now got, and Hader just being able to slam a door shut better than anyone the Rockies or the Reds have right now, it could be such a game changer. The Marlins, it's not that I don't believe in them. I think that they've got enough young talent. It's just about experience, and they've got a lot of games still to play. They've only played 38 games right now, so they've still got games in hand on a number of these teams. They're going to have to hold on more or less than anything else. Whereas the pack in front of them, the pack behind them, are only 2.5 games back at worst, and a lot of that's in the win or the loss column. So
they should be feeling the hot breath on
the
their neck.
The Mets are the wild card because I just have no idea what to expect from them any night out. To me, the starting rotation has been kind of the low key problem for the Mets. Like between Rick Porcello, Michael Wacha, guys that just they were hoping to give them quality innings, just haven't. They just been, there's the Porcello is just giving up way too many hits. Wacha's gotten rocked a few times. Matz has been put in the bullpen. They're really counting on Seth Lugo to be their number 2 starter, and he was supposed to be their best player in the bullpen this year. So there's lots to be positive about your Mets fan. Michael Conforto has been awesome. Robinson Cano's had a great turnaround, and Pete Alonso's hit the ball hard the last week or so. But it's just so tough to really they're going to provide on any given night.
Yeah, they're having a hard time getting everything in one place for a game, and that's why they're losing a lot of 4-3s and 5-4s and 10-9s. They've got 4 or 5 hitters who can all do it. They just aren't doing it all on the same night. Robinson Cano's had a really nice age 37 season so far. J.D. Davis has been productive over at third base. He's not exactly David Wright 2.0, but he's useful at the very least. Jeff McNeil's still batting .315, and Dominic Smith is hitting doubles on doubles. But like you said,
Andres Jimenez has been a good addition too.
But that pitching staff is beyond DeGrom, Lugo, and Edwin, and the resurgent version of Edwin Diaz. It's been rough. They're having kind of a struggly season so far.
Yeah, they're the wild card. Like we saw last year after July, they were arguably the best team in baseball for a month. So they do have it in them to all of a sudden turn their entire year around and make up a 2-game gap on a lesser team in Miami. But vice versa, they could just kind of wallow in mediocrity as they have for the entire season to this point.
Yeah. Well, that National League race is going to be one to watch. Next week, we'll talk about the American League playoff race, which is a little bit less interesting, but still kind of fun. Chris, any parting shots?
No, I think it'll be a really fun last third of the season to see how this all shakes out, and then the playoff race, the playoff series is going to be fascinating to see these 1 versus 8 matchups in which there's really no benefit to winning your division this year. You'll get to be at home, but there's not nearly the kind of level of comfort, the level of the feel good factor that you would in a normal season. You don't get any sort of bye or anything like that. So it'll be interesting to see if some of these 8 seeds can, catch somebody by surprise and knock someone out.
Yeah, the chances of a Cinderella story, they seem to be a little bit higher this season.
They are very high. We've seen a couple of them in the NHL with these formats. Like no one really expected the Islanders to get this far, and no one expected the Dallas Stars to get there. No one expected the Stars to get there either, but some lower seeds that have had some good runs.
Hey, COVID does some crazy things besides making people not be able to breathe. So, last couple of things. Thank you to Michelle at Bombshell Bowling for sponsoring Loudmouth Sports Talk. Thank you to Jake at Rap Fitness for sponsoring these guns. So, in short, buy these shirts, hire this trainer, and arrest these fuckers. Thank you all, and good night.